Hey guys, it's Ahmad with Lead and Steel. I'm proud and humbled to announce our newest rifle line, the All-Rounder Carbine. Stay tuned. The ARC is our take on a Tier 1 rifle, one that you don't have to worry about, that you can just grab and go, and not have to question the durability or longevity of. Let's get into the technical details of what makes this rifle novel, and why you should seriously consider it if you're a professional end user. We start with the monoblock barrel. The monoblock barrel, as many of you know, is licensed from a company called HM Defense. They're local to us. They're a manufacturing partner, and we're humbled to do business with them. They came up with a beautiful gas block integrated design where the gas block and gas system is effectively machined into the barrel blank, meaning you don't install a gas block in the monoblock barrel. It comes with it. It's part of the steel substrate. And so what that offers you is absolute peace of mind when it comes to your gas system security. The downside with the traditional barrel design and a low profile gas block that has to be installed is that there are some inherent variables when it comes to gas block installation. Some of the things that we do with our traditional barrels, the non-monoblock barrels, is that we dimple our barrels, right? So we create a little concavity for the serrated screw to dig into the steel and to keep the gas block from moving. You don't really know if some manufacturers do some of those basic add-ons. Are they measuring the OD of the barrel and the ID of the gas block? Is the gas block CNC'd or is it like injection molded? Is it made of the same steel as the barrel so that your thermal expansion coefficient is in line? Right, these are things that we do from our end from a traditional barrel manufacturing perspective, but it's always something that comes up as a potential failure point for ARs. And so when we decided to build the ARC, we went with the monoblock barrel to entirely negate that variable. So what we ended up with is the most durable gas system in the industry, where again, the gas block is formed from the blank itself. Now, obviously it's a little more expensive, it's more time consuming, it's not as easy to manufacture, but again, it gives you that peace of mind that you're looking for. You don't want any gas system failures. Now, our monoblock barrels are a little different from off the shelf. The first thing we do is we profile them so that they're a little lighter weight up front, where we keep much of the barrel steel near the chamber. And so you get a lighter weight, easier to maneuver rifle. But obviously you still get enough meat on the bones for some consistent accuracy during, high volume fire. We also dialed in our port sizing in a way where it balances suppressed and unsuppressed use very well, especially on this 13.9-inch MIDI. And with that, we also conserve the gas system length as a mid-length on all of the barrels, including the 12.5, 13.9, 14.5, and 16. Our barrels are also sent to a chrome house to get electro-polished and then chrome-plated, so it gives you an added degree of service life. When they come back to us, we make sure that they are properly manganese phosphate coated, and so you get that added, rust prevention that you're looking for on the surface of the barrel. We also match crown the barrels, so you have a good bit of accuracy there too. With that being said, our barrels, although they are chrome lined, they are still sub-MOA guaranteed with Mark II 62 ammunition. These are accurate barrels, but they obviously offer you the longevity of a chrome-lined bore. And yes, the barrels are made of 4150 chromoly vanadium, as they should be. Finally, because the gas block is so low profile, you're not going to get any impingement on the gas block when it comes to M-LOK accessories at the 6 o'clock position. You're not going to be running into a gas block, if you will, if you want to put up an angled grip or something like that. So nice little clearance add there too. Now, the 13.9-inch monoblock that we just showed you is not the only pinned and welded option that we're going to have on the website. We'll also have a 14.5 MIDI, and we'll have a standard 16-inch unpinned and welded, obviously, so you can swap out the muzzle device if you like. We'll be launching with some JMAC dead air muzzle devices that can be pinned and welded from the factory, so you don't have to worry about taking it to a gunsmith or something to get done. Now, we covered the barrel, one of the biggest benefactors of the ARC. We still need to talk about the bolt carrier group. The bolt carrier group will have its own dedicated presentation shortly after the launch of the ARC. Look, we're not reinventing the wheel when it comes to the bolt, but we're doing the little things right. First things first, our bolt carrier groups use genuine Carpenter 158 material for the bolt head. Each bolt is individually proof tested and magnetic particle inspected. Proof testing, as the name implies, is simply firing a proof round, that is a round that is intentionally overpressured past SAMI spec, to stress the bolt lugs and the bolt architecture. That bolt then gets ran through something called magnetic particle inspection, where a ferromagnetic fluid gets tossed around the bolt, and you can effectively inspect it for any stress fractures or other oddities post-firing schedule. We do that because these bolts are machined from bar stock. They are not hammer forged bolts, and so sometimes during the manufacturing process you may have either impurities in the steel or otherwise some structural deformities while that bolt is being machined, and those stressors will come out very early on in the bolt's life. And so when we proof test the bolts, we may shave off a tiny bit of service life towards the tail end of the bolt, but we effectively remove all of the bolts that will be breaking early within 500 rounds. As a result of poor, metallurgy or heat treat or something like that. And it helps us with a little bit of quality control. So guaranteeing that service life is effectively the ethos of the ARC bolt carrier group, and you'll see it with the other components that make this sucker up. Let's get to the carrier. The carrier is 8620 steel as per TDP, but we do a couple of things to this bolt carrier that are a little special. First things first, we control the grind of the internal bolt diameter before it goes off to grind and heat treat, and we make it intentionally tighter so that the bolt has an adjusted gas seal that makes up for the coating technology that we use. Let me get into that. Look, a traditional M16 bolt carrier group, a chrome phosphate bolt carrier, if you will have chrome lining inside of the bolt carrier. So that when the bolt rides inside the carrier with the gas rings against the internal surfaces, it's riding against chrome. Chrome is a great plating technology. It's just a little old, and obviously it adds a decent amount of thickness to the part that you're using. And so usually when it comes to manufacturing, you have to compensate for the added chrome depth, right? How much material you're physically adding to the substrate. So what happens when you use a coating that doesn't have the same amount of plating depth as you do, say, chrome lining? Let's say you use something like gas nitride, for example, which is about 2 to 3 microns of depth. That's basically nothing, right? What happens to the bolt carrier when it gets nitrided versus chromed? Well, if you're machining that carrier to be the same spec as TDP before chrome, then what happens is you have a little more slop in that bolt carrier, and those gas rings are doing a little more work, meaning that there is not enough material inside the carrier to give you the same service life that you would expect out of a traditional chrome phosphate bolt. We DLC and PVD our bolt carrier groups. This one particularly is titanium nitride. These are coatings that go in very, very thin. And so our bolt carriers, when they get sent out to grind, make up for that difference, meaning that we machine them intentionally tighter to make up for the very thin coatings that we put on that are nearly superior to chrome lining in every way. So we already discussed that the ARC bolt carrier group uses either a DLC or titanium nitride coating, depending on the end user's selection there. Why didn't we use black nitride or gas nitride, melaniting, etc.? Everything that falls under the nitrocarburizing, umbrella. Well, realistically speaking, nitrocarburizing is a process that could potentially damage the temper of the steel. Okay, when you bind that reactive cyano group, that carbon nitrogen compound to the steel, you have to heat the steel to about 1,000 degrees or so. Okay, and when it comes to the proper grade of steel, when it comes to bolt carrier groups especially, you're bringing it near the temper range. And so when you play with the heat treat of the part, you could potentially mess with the lattice structure of the steel and nosedive the Rockwell hardness of the substrate as a result. And obviously it all depends on the step down temperature of the process, the protocol, or the contractor that you're using. But it's too many variables for us to play with. Now, nitride on just basic rolling friction components like your bolt carrier, that's totally fine. And like we said, it goes on very thin. But when it comes to components that experience shear, like the bolt head and the bolt lugs, that's something that we hesitate with. Reason being is when you nitride a part, that surface hardness goes up significantly in terms of Rockwell hardness. But like we discussed, the substrate steel, usually when you cut away a bolt carrier group that's a nitrocarburized, you'll see that substrate has gone down about 12 to 15 Rockwell hardness. And that's not the best for longevity. And so we decided to pay the premium for a family of PVDs, including DLC and titanium nitride, because these go on at a significantly colder temperature, about 300 degrees. And so you're nowhere near the temper range of the steel. It's a lot more expensive, obviously, but it gets you a better product. Why? Because the Rockwell hardness goes up substantially, similar to black nitride levels. The coating thickness is also the same, about 3 microns or so. But again, it doesn't play with the lattice structure of the steel or the steel's temper. It's a fantastic coating, and in my opinion, it's the best coating in the industry right now. Definitely beating out things like chrome, manganese phosphate, nitride, God forbid, nickel boron. These are excellent coatings, and it's why we chose them for the ARC. Now, obviously, not all DLCs and PVDs are the same. If you just pick up a standard DLC bolt carrier group from whoever, you may experience some faster wear in some components than you would with an ARC bolt. That's because we prep our bolt carrier groups through almost like a REM polish before we send it to the DLC house. Why? Because the surface of the part needs to be as polished and as even as possible before the DLC can be taken advantage of. When you get like a satin or a matte DLC bolt carrier group, those coatings wear off quicker. Why? Because there are lots of valleys and mountains in the, the microstructure of the steel before the DLC is applied. And so obviously they all get, ground down over time. With that rougher coating, and so you get exposed steel as a result. Whereas with us, this bolt carrier group specifically has several hundred rounds on it, and you wouldn't be able to tell because all the coating has not moved at all. And so that's just one more thing that we do to make sure our bolt carrier groups stand out from the crowd. Obviously, when it comes to individual component selection, nothing on this bolt carrier group is metal injection molded. Our gas keys are chrome lined and machined. Our grade 8 fasteners are ox fasteners. We install them with Permatex to 53 inch-pounds. And thread locker, of course. We displace material into the head of the fastener. We don't strike it with a stake, so that obviously preserves the integrity of the head of the fastener so it doesn't shear. Our extractor is billet machined. Okay, it is not a metal injection molded part. We use genuine Sprinco springs and Sprinco cryogenically treated gas rings on the bolt, and so you're extending your service life with all these small additions. Again, we're not reinventing the wheel here, but we're doing the little things right. So again, Carpenter 158 material, individually proof tested and mag particle inspected, rem polished, DLC'd or titanium nitrided, depending on the option that you want to play with. No metal injection molded parts, individually gauged, installed properly by a competent armorer, and included in your rifle that is test fired. Now, we talked about the barrel, we talked about the bolt carrier group, let's talk about our handguard. Most standard free float rails on the market right now, they have this weird clamping style procedure where the 6000 series aluminum is effectively wrapped around the barrel nut and then torqued around it with some fasteners at the bottom. We don't like that design because it causes some undue stresses and wear, or potential stresses, I should say, on the handguard, and it doesn't really bode well for long-term handguard rigidity. Yes, it's a, I guess historically used design, doesn't make it ideal, especially considering a gas tube, bisects that extrusion to begin with. So what we do with our handguard is we have a wedge locking system, if you will. We partnered with an OEM to help us develop this. We're effectively pinching and affixing the handguard to the barrel nut. We're not pulling or torquing on the handguard in a weird way. And so what this allows for is added rail rigidity. That's good, especially if you're using, say, an IR device, like a laser or an illuminator. Now, not pictured with the handguard is the inclusion of steel QD cups for the sling. As many of you know, we employ several competition shooters, special teams guys, law enforcement, who run our pre-production stuff and beta test the hell out of it for us so that we don't beta test on the end user, of course. And one of our partners discovered an issue with our handguard, and it's a phenomenon with standard 6061 handguards. Over time, the QD rings that are machined into them will eventually wear out because you're using a steel QD ring. And so we're going to be adding steel QD rings. It's not pictured right now, but they are almost ready, and you'll get one with your ARC if you purchase it today. Now, to wrap up the upper receiver, we have our ambidextrous charging handle. It has a little gas diverting cutout in it. We call it the chode. It's small, doesn't get in the way, it doesn't impact your gear as you sling your rifle. As for the gas diverting part, yes, it helps a little bit, but it's not game changing. Okay, none of those special like suppressor charging handles really are. If you have an overgas rifle because you have a can that adds a ton of back pressure, think about mitigating it at the source. In our case, because of the monoblock design, we always opt for BRT gas tubes. These are modified gas tubes with smaller portholes. So if you're running it suppressed all the time and you have a high back pressure suppressor, you could always, implement that. As for the 13.9 MIDI, this thing suppresses wonderfully. It was tuned for suppressed and unsuppressed use and properly done so, meaning that it comes with a traditional carbine buffer and chrome silicon buffer spring, and it's made to run unsuppressed and run reliably unsuppressed. This includes colder weather conditions, a dirty rifle, underperforming ammunition, that sort of stuff. And so when you put a can on it, you still get very reliable and healthy ejection right around 2 or 3 o'clock. And if you wanted to add some buffer weight to that, maybe an H or an H2 buffer, you certainly could, and you could slow down that bolt velocity as well. But when it comes from the factory, each arc is reliable. Please do not throw in your favorite, whatever accessory just because the internet told you to. Just take it out and shoot it and not worry about it. When you start adding some variables into the system, then obviously you can play with the reliability and durability. Just know that the arc out of the box is made to be utterly reliable. Now that the upper receiver is done, let's talk about the lower receiver. The lower receiver, and obviously by extension the upper as well, the receiver set, if you will, is forged out of 7075 T6 as it should be per TDP. We control the drawings when it comes to the tolerances of the receiver fitment, and so we make sure that the rifle is not a maraca when you get it, but it's also easy to disassemble and pull apart. The lower comes with our enhanced reliability combat trigger. This is a sub 4-pound single stage trigger. It is not anything particularly match grade, but it's still fast. The reason why it's not crazy match grade is because we wanted to preserve the hammer's mil-spec hammer's weight and spring weight. And so, by preserving the hammer mass and spring weight, we have reliable primer ignition. You don't have to worry about that. But you still get a slightly lighter trigger pull, and so you can be a little faster with this gun compared to a standard like nickel polished mil-spec trigger. The bolt catch that's present on the ARC is an enlarged affair. It has a slightly larger bolt catch at the bottom paddle there, which I think is the most important part of the bolt catch. The safety selector is ambidextrous from the factory. It's not being pictured here because I personally don't like ambi safeties, but rest assured your ARC will come with an ambidextrous safety. Other small fixings like an enlarged trigger guard, a nice ergonomic vertical grip, and a SOP mod stock are all included with the All-Rounder Carbine, so you don't have to worry about getting some quality furniture when you pick up your rifle. And obviously the entire rifle is wrapped up in this beautiful Type 3 hard coat anodized. It's going to come in charcoal gray, which is a nice deep gray. It's almost black. It's nice and stealthy. We have our earth color, which is like a multi-FDE. And we obviously have the olive drab green. Now, a small note on anodizing. Type 3 hard coat, for those who don't know, is an electrolytic process. It's a chemical process where the aluminum is effectively going through several dunk tanks or baths where the substrate, or the surface rather of the substrate, builds up a crystalline structure. Okay, it's a very hard coating, and you can add a dye to it as we've done. And it's far more durable than any painted or post-applied product. So it's more durable than like your Cerakote, your Duracoat, whatever. I know most of you are just gonna rattle can this thing anyway, so it doesn't matter. But for those of you that care about the rifle's finish, anodizing will take you that much further than traditional painted surfaces. The downside with anodizing is that it doesn't come out as consistent as traditional painted surfaces. And so, our colors on our rifles will vary. Right, each rifle will be different, and that's as a result of prioritizing the coating thickness first, the crystalline structure thickness first and foremost, and then the dye as a result of that. And so your green rifle might have a slightly lighter or darker handguard, lighter or upper receiver, buffer tube, etc. It's part of the magic of anodizing, and it's part of the uniqueness of the rifle. And so just keep that in mind if you're interested in picking one up. And on another note, the All-Rounder Carbine is not going to be entirely blemish-free, okay? You're going to see some forging marks. You're going to see some, lines from the anodizing, some machine marks, tooling marks, test fire, proof marks, that sort of stuff. It's totally fine. It's normal. It's expected. We are not making immaculate museum pieces here. We're making tools for the professional end user, and we want that rifle to go the extra distance for them. And so please excuse us if you find a small tooling mark or scratch on your rifle when you receive it. It is meant to be beat up and abused. Now let's talk about pricing and availability. The 16-inch mid-length ARC is available now, the 13.9-inch and 14.5, maybe a week or two after this video launches. They're going to start at about $1,300 for your standard 16-inch rifle. Okay, with that, you get the complete rifle, you get a set of backup irons, so you get a 30-round magazine, and I think it's a pretty good value. If you're watching this at the launch, we may have a special promotion for you, but otherwise, $1,300 for a 16-inch ARC that has the most secure, durable gas system in the industry, in my opinion, one of the best bolts in the industry. I think you're getting a hell of a value for the product that you're receiving. The 14.5 and 13.9s will come to market with a street price at about $1,500. They will obviously come with pinned and welded muzzle devices. We are choosing JMac Customs as our muzzle device supplier. They use the dead air chemo mounting architecture, and that's for a little more universality. Yes, obviously, just the upper receivers, stripped barrel assemblies, if you will be available on the website for a price significantly cheaper than the entire rifle. So if you wanted to build it out yourself, or you wanted to put on a Surefire muzzle device or pin it and weld it yourself, obviously we'll give you the freedom to do that. We also have some cool optic bundles there. If you want a color matched LP1 with your ARC, you can opt to pick one of those up. It'll be significantly discounted from the price of picking up a rifle plus an optic separately, so you can get some savings there. And that's pretty much it. That's the All-Rounder Carbine. We just wanted something that we could pick up and rely on and not have to worry about, that don't come with some of the big question marks that the industry kind of hides under the rugs, being some of the gas system security choices, the bolt carrier group manufacturing and coating technologies, that sort of stuff. So with the ARC, it's obviously backed with our lifetime guarantee for the original purchaser. You do not have to sweat the little things when it comes to the All-Rounder Carbine. You just pick it up and you run the shit out of it, and that's the end of it. So yeah, guys, that's the All-Rounder Carbine. Thanks so much for watching. We have a lot more coming. The Jag, or just as good, 16 and 18-inch SPR varieties will be here. The Pandora, that's our closed emitter, large window, red dot sight that uses the Acro P2 mounting architecture. It'll also come to market significantly cheaper than the competition, and it's made again for that professional end user. So, obviously we're always working on something over here, constantly plugging away at the next project. We don't have a ton of money when it comes to marketing, so if you don't mind, please do us a favor, share the video around. It'll help us tremendously. And finally, if you're in the Midwest and you're looking for some quality training, hit up Team Anvil. These guys are buddies of ours. They have very, very well stacked resumes and know a thing or two about training people on carbines and handguns. So that's pretty much that, guys. Thanks for watching. Take care, and we'll see you in the next one.